Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Omar, and today I'm going to be bringing you my predictions for the final standings of the NALCS Summer Split and my playoff predictions. Hopefully, you guys do enjoy the gameplay in the background. It's going to be an old gameplay, like a really old gameplay from back in Plat 5 with Cho, so hopefully, you guys do enjoy that. If I sound a little weird, it's because I just had surgery on my mouth. I had my wisdom teeth taken out, so I do apologize for that. But hopefully you guys can look past that. So getting right into it, I think there are 6 clear teams that are going to make it into the playoffs. I think that I really don't see Apex or Energy sneaking in there. I just really don't. And then Phoenix 1 and Echo Fox really just look way worse than the rest of the teams in the league. And I just don't see them making the playoffs at all. I think it's pretty clear cut who's going to make it. So you have TSM Immortals, Liquid, Cloud9, Team Envy, and then Counterlogic Gaming. I think by the end of the split, Team Envy is going to be the 6th seed because they're currently 6-6 right now, but I believe originally they were either 4-1 or 5-1. They just have not looked good recently, and I think it's just due to a lack of raw talent. I think that their synergy isn't bad, but as individually as players, I don't think that they're particularly amazing or anything like that. And I think that they're almost at their ceiling right now, and I don't see really that much room for improvement. I think that individually they're just not as strong or as talented as some of the other teams, and they're just performing at a level that I think is reasonable for the talent that they actually have, and that level is about middle of the pack, bottom middle of the pack sort of deal. So I do predict that they'll end up in 6th place, and then assuming everything goes the way that goes similar to how it's going right now, I think CLG will sneak away with probably the 5th seed. I could see them being above Cloud9, who has looked absolutely horrible in recent weeks, but CLG did just lose to P1. Well, one of the games, not the series, but still, that shouldn't be happening, and that's just unacceptable for CLG. Darshan has looked horrible this entire split. It's really sad because you saw what Darshan did at MSI, and he looked very strong on his Poppy in Maokai. He looked like he was comfortable playing tanks, and he had finally moved on from just playing strictly split push champions, but as soon as the split went on and it went to the summer split, they reverted back to old habits, and Darshan's playing strictly split push top laners, and I think that forcing your team to play a split push sort of game, that really it just does not look good. And Aphromoo has looked the most consistent of anyone on the team. Everyone had their questions about Huhi and Stixxay, and I think that obviously their performances thus far have been questionable. I think Huhi has not looked good, whereas Stixxay has looked really average to below average. He's weak in lane, and I think that they're doing a good job of disguising how weak he actually is in lane with Aphromoo, who obviously I think is one of the best supports in NA. A lot of the plays, like at the end of one of the most recent games, it was just basically Aphromoo completely carried the team. He had a flash flay on Thresh that won them the game when they were about to lose, because it had reached the ultra late game and the other team had a Caitlyn and all these other extremely late game carries. So Aphromoo sort of been carrying CLG. And Darshan, if they want to do well, I need to see more from Darshan. I need him to step up in things other than just split pushing. I think that they need to play a different style of game if they actually want to do better. For the number 4 seed, I'm going to assume that it's going to be Cloud9. I think that it's between Cloud9 and Liquid, obviously. And I think that Cloud9 recently has just not looked good. I could see them bringing it back, but overall, I think that it's hard to say. I think that Meteos is a strong jungler, but he's not this playmaker that they need. They have Jensen in the mid lane, who he basically, at this point in time, every other team's just camping Jensen because C9 is really lacking other threats throughout the map. And I think that while Meteos, he's not bad, he just plays this extremely farm heavy jungle sort of deal, and that's not what they need right now. Sneaky has looked very bad in recent weeks. He looked good to start off the split, but he's sort of solidified his position as like a middle tier ADC that he sort of always has been in recent weeks, where his performance is kind of inconsistent. He had a really poor game last week where he was, I believe, 0-4, 0-5, and it was just not looking good for Sneaky. So I don't know. He looks good on his Jhin, but on other more meta AD carries, although Jhin is definitely meta AD carries, but on other AD carries like Sivir, he has not looked nearly as good, and I think Sivir is the strongest ADC right now. So unless that changes, he definitely needs to be able to pick up Sivir and look better on her. As for Liquid, they're in a really strange position where they took a game off Immortals. I think they're a really strong team. It's sort of, their strength is contingent on Dardoch carrying them very hard, and I don't know how long that's going to last, especially against teams like Immortals, where I think they could have won that last game, but they just got smacked by Immortals. Like, the rest of Immortals' team was just so much better. You could just overpower Dardoch, where they have Fabia AD carry, but I think he's weak in lane. Everyone talks about, oh, he plays well in these utility carries, but I think that as the meta shifts to more carry-oriented AD carries, and as people start coming up for other options against Ashe, and you can't strictly play Ashe and Sivir forever. I think that's going to go away, and they really are going to miss Piglet, who's the hard AD carry sort of style, as soon as Caitlyn and other ADCs come into the meta more and more. Because obviously the meta is going to shift eventually, and it's not going to stay Sivir Ashe forever. So Sivir Ashe Jhin, which is sort of exclusively what he plays. I don't think he's like that great. I think his Ashe arrows have been phenomenal, but other than that, I haven't really been impressed by Liquid and Fabi as a whole. So I think that ideally Liquid wants Piglet back by playoffs, but who knows? Maybe he is a really big problem for the team. I don't know. I see them being third by the end of the season. Number 2 and number 1, it's Immortals TSM. I think that it's possible Immortals wins the next series against TSM. I definitely do. I think that they're both extremely strong teams. I think they'll both play well internationally if Immortals is able to sort of get away from their pandemonium style, chaos style of gameplay. I think that isn't going to last at the international stage, but I think they're talented enough as a team. Huni has not looked as good as he did last split, but obviously the top lane competition is much stronger right now, and I don't want to really talk about TSM and Immortals together, but you sort of have to. In terms of how strong NA LCS has looked, it's clearly TSM and Immortals at the top. There's no doubt in my mind, no doubt in anyone's mind, that these are going to be the top 2 teams coming out of the regular season, and I think it's pretty... If I was a betting man, I would definitely put my money on TSM and Immortals being the top 2 teams coming out of playoffs. But I'll get into that later. Essentially, I think that Immortals, their Pobelter, people have been saying that Pobelter is doing crazy things this split, and I love Pobelter. I love his streams. He's one of my favorite pros, but I have to look at him through the unbiased eye. And honestly, aside from his Victor games, which have looked phenomenal, other than Victor, I don't know, he's okay on a lot of other champions, but he's not crazy strong. I think unless he's on Victor, he's not this crazy mid laner doing tons of damage and carrying Immortals. I think it's when he's on Victor, which happens to be a lot, he looks extremely strong, and people are putting them up there in the top of the mid lane standings, and comparing him to other top mid laners in NA. But I think that overall, Pobelter, he needs to show his strength on other champions besides Victor, and he showed he can play a ton of champions. He has a huge champion pool, but sometimes they don't look refined. Like his Zilean looked great the first game, and then the second game he played it didn't look so great. His Talia looked horrible, honestly. Like he was hitting some of the ults, and his ults were effective, but his skill shots were just not good. They were looking really, really poor. He did say that he only had like 6 or 7 games on Talia, so I guess if that's true, it's completely understandable. But I don't know. I think Talia is going to be slipping into the meta more, and he's going to need to be able to pick up Talia and look better than he did against TL. But you know, it's whatever. I think Immortals is going to look strong, and as I said before, I think they could win the series against TSM, but I think TSM's still going to place first, even if Immortals wins the series, because I don't see TSM losing to anyone else besides Immortals. And even if they lose the series to Immortals, it's going to be a 1-1 in head-to-head, and TSM's very far up in terms of the map count, which is what matters after head-to-head matchups, so I don't see TSM not placing first. TSM as a whole, I think they look really strong. Biofrost has looked fine. I think that was a big question mark coming into the split. Could he fill the shoes of Yellowstar? The person that's actually surprised me the most, obviously Bjergsen looks phenomenal right now. I don't think you can say that he's not the best looking player in NA right now. I think I'm not a big fan of TSM, and I have to say Bjergsen looks like the strongest NA player, but I think that Svenskeren is actually looking phenomenal right now. He is taking away buffs. He's extremely aggressive. In the few games that they have lost, it's usually because Svenskeren is having an off game. I think that's the biggest part. Doublelift is looking phenomenal as well. He's sort of been playing strictly Lucian Sivir, but I think it doesn't really matter because they're both strong picks, and TSM has showed that he can sort of alternate to other picks as well. It's not that he just plays those two champions because he's terrible at everything else. I think he's strong on other champions. It's just that he'll keep playing those ones if he can, and then if he draws target bans where people are banning away his Lucian, it's just like, oh, LOL, I'm playing Sivir. And then if you take both of them, I think he'll just play something else and beat you on that as well. So, I don't know. I think that target banning Doublelift is not effective right now. And overall, I just think that TSM's so versatile in what they can play. They can play Zilean comps. They can play all kinds of comps with split pushes with Hauntzer, who's also... I think Hauntzer has looked like probably the weakest link on TSM. He's had a lot of games where he's just been camped completely. I guess that's not completely his fault, but he has been dying a lot. And obviously in Twitch chat, you see a lot of Dyrus spam whenever he dies. He's had a lot of games where he's actually going like 0-4, 0-5, 1-4, stuff like that. And then he usually picks it up late game after they start team fighting, and usually the rest of the team isn't far behind at all. So I think he's the weakest link right now, but it might just be because TSM isn't really helping him out. They're sort of focusing on the other lanes. I don't really know. As for the coming out of playoffs, I sort of went off on regular standings and my opinions on the teams, but that would be, if my predictions were correct, I'd have Envy versus Liquid, and then Cloud9 versus CLG. I think Liquid beats Envy any day of the week. Although, actually, I don't know. I think Envy actually has a chance against Liquid, and I think that Cloud9 beats CLG, although that one also can go either way. I think that there's such a huge difference between TSM and Immortals and then the other four teams, where I think TSM and Immortals, they're very close in skill level, and I could see either one beating each other, but I don't see TSM or Immortals losing to any team other than Liquid possibly, and even Liquid I highly doubt that they could beat either of those teams. So yeah, I think that it's kind of irrelevant. I think if I had to put my money, I'd say that it's going to be Liquid is going to place third, Cloud9 is going to place fourth, and then in the... I think it's going to be Immortals versus TSM finals, and I actually think that Immortals could win it, but they have to prove that they aren't just going to play the Chaos style, because that's actually how they beat TSM in the series, or for one of the games in the series the first time they played, was they just made it this Chaos style, and the TSM just couldn't catch up to Immortals, and I think that style works for some reason for Immortals, but it's not going to work against teams that are even better than TSM. So if they get matched up against Korean teams internationally, because obviously if they place second, they'll have a spot at Worlds, I think that it definitely won't work. And if I had to say who I think is going to win, I think it would be TSM, just because I think they play the Zilean comp so well. Immortals had a lot of problems against the Zilean comp. I think that's why Pobelter is picking up Zilean, where he can take it away from Bjergsen, because I honestly think Immortals is scared of Bjergsen Zilean. I think Pobelter has played Azir in the past, and that's sort of like the default Bjergsen champion, where if it isn't banned away, which it has been a lot recently, if it's not banned away, I think that everyone's just, everyone's banning it away. But if it isn't, then Bjergsen's obviously going to just play it. So I don't know how that is, but you can play Viktor into Azir, and obviously if TSM isn't banning away Viktor, I'm not sure, because Pobelter looks so much better on Viktor than he does any other champion. So I don't know if it's worth giving away an Azir for a Viktor. I don't think it is, but I think Immortals, if they want to beat TSM, they have to have Pobelter on a Viktor, and they can't have Huni playing some weird champion. Like, I don't think Riven is a good idea. I just don't against TSM. I think that there are too many. I just don't see that working against. I don't think Huni's cheese is going to work against TSM. So I think Rumble, Irelia, I think those picks are fine, but I'm really concerned about Huni and Pobelter's champion pool in terms of what they look strong on. So those are the two X factors. I think if Svenskeren plays well, they're not going to have a problem. But if Svenskeren gets behind and Reignover outperforms him, I think that TSM loses to Immortals. But I would say that it is likely TSM is going to win. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. If you guys did, make sure to drop a like. And if you are new, a subscription would be greatly appreciated. It's been your boy Omar, and peace out, guys.